think is the biggest challenge in financial design today?
For organisations where designers have been just handed off to an agency where they really haven't had much ownership of it internally, I imagine that the design maturity is lower.
But experience and trust to me is actually the bigger part, I would say, in terms of that adoption part of challenges that we face in financial design today.
There's a lot of work to actually prove the value of design because our leaders want to see the metrics. They want to see how is design actually returning on investment for this organization, and they need to see that connection because they're investing a lot in it.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I head design for Mashreq. I've been at Mashreq for coming up for almost 5 years. I joined Mashreq just after, maybe a few months after they started their digital transformation journey. I think there was just a few designers. I could see one of them that was there at the time, sitting over there now. And so we were very small at the time. I think we had something like 5 designers when I joined. We've now got over 40 in the team. It's in terms of disciplines, we've expanded out. So we've got visual designers, UX designers, researchers, copywriter.
Hey, good evening. I'm Nithin. I head design and brand and experience for Tamara. So I joined very recently, so it's like in 5 months in Tamara and in Dubai. I moved from Barcelona. I was with Globo. I was heading UX over there. Again, design, content design, user research, these functions. Previously, I was fortunate to work in fintech in as early as 2014, 15, 16. That was when I started my fintech journey. And in a mix of like in fintech experience and marketplace products, that's where I have been primarily working on. So excited here in MENA region and GCC and seeing how the growth that is happening, and as Amber shared so just now. So looking forward, and happy to share some of the thinking that I have in this area.
Hi everyone, I'm Neda, and I'm working right now with Alraedah Finance. We're a financing company based out of Riyadh in Saudi. I've been there now for 2 years, and previous to that, I was working with a startup here in the fintech space called Yap. Maybe some of you guys have heard of them. I was with them since 2018, consulting with them to help build the startup from the ground up. So it was actually an amazing journey to enter once during the time when fintechs were just starting to creep up here in the UAE. So I got to go through the full experience of building a B2C fintech as well as a B2B fintech. And then I've done a lot of different advisory work for other fintechs based in the UK and also here in the UAE, and working with some banks as well. So I have a lot of experience that I'd love to share with you guys. My background is in user experience design and design strategy. Started off my career in Canada and been in the UAE for 14 years, mostly consulting on agency side as well.
We believe, our audience believes, that design maturity is the biggest challenge. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Do you want to add your perspective to it from your experience? Let's start with you, Amanda.
I think design maturity is going to be individual to each organisation, right? So each organisation is going to be probably at a slightly different point within design maturity level. For organisations where designers have been just handed off to an agency where they really haven't had much ownership of it internally, I imagine that the design maturity is lower, and it takes time to grow. I think at Mashreq, when I joined Mashreq, as I said before, there were very few designers, and I think our design maturity was very low. Previous to starting their digital transformation, I think they had 2 designers that sat in the marketing team, and they'd never done any customer research for products. They'd never done any user testing. They didn't really understand the difference between the different skill sets from that falls under the UX umbrella. But I think where we were 4 years ago for Mashreq, for example, is a very different place to where we are now. It's not perfect, but it's certainly gone up the maturity ladder, and I think that that's going to be the same for a lot of organisations. They're going to be changing over time. Some of them are going to be going up the maturity ladder. Some of them may go down depending on the changes, the organisational changes that they make. But I don't know that design maturity would be just an issue within the fintech or the banking space. I think generally, regionally, I think it's slightly lower anyway, but it's maturing at a rate. I think, for example, these types of sessions that we're having now. I think when I came to the UAE just 7 years ago, there really weren't very many happening at all, and now we have 2 today. Just in Dubai. So as I said, design maturity I think is specific to the organisation, and you can help the organisation to grow its design maturity, but it really needs to understand where to take those steps and what steps it needs to take.
Thank you, Amanda. Nithin, what do you think? First of all, do you agree with the poll here?
I have a slightly different view over here. Because, financial design, I think the biggest pain point that I've seen, because I've worked in Asian markets and also in a bit of European market, and here as well. So the biggest challenge is the adoption itself. Because why I'm saying the adoption of digital technology, because if you look at finance as an industry is not new. It has been there for ages, and people have built relationships. People have been using this for quite a while. And from there, when we think about the digital age, and definitely, and there are definitely triggers that happen, like you mentioned in the previous example of the COVID, or at that point of time, that triggered a kind of adoption to us, which means that the digital industry started people started realizing there is much more easier way to let's say do the transaction beyond your brick and mortar options, that relationship that you have been doing earlier. So the transformation happened. So it's not about the distance between that, the financial digital first design, and what we have today is the awareness of that you can actually do it an easier way. So the adoption to me is actually the bigger challenge, I would say. And taking that step back, of course, trust is part of it, because you need to start building the trust, and that's there in terms of bringing in that adoption. And of course, design maturity and other pieces are there, but experience and trust to me is actually the bigger part, I would say, in terms of that adoption part of challenges that we face in financial design today.
So kind of agreeing with both of you actually on that point. If design maturity is the greatest challenge that you have in your organization, that means you are going to have a challenge with trust, and you are going to have a challenge with experience. Because how can you actually allow your leaders to trust what you're doing in design if you don't have the proper maturity within your teams to sell design in that way? And that will also go ahead and impact the experience design that you're building as well. So actually, these are all related. You can't really have one challenge without having the other. Because as designers, all of these things that you see here, all of these challenges, it's all part of what we do in the work that and the outcomes and the outputs that we are delivering to our business. So agreeing with you guys both, it's really going to be dependent upon your business in the sense of where you are in your maturity, which is what Amanda was saying, and then trust and experience, which are extremely important to have that maturity level, definitely will be impacted by how mature already your team is and your leadership, your design leadership is.
Also interesting to see how people are perceiving. This is perceptions from people, and then combined with your experiences. What I heard from you, Amanda, that the industry is maturing, design is maturing. And I think earlier in our conversation, you brought up that point that you've been here for 7 years, and you have seen the transition, and you're quite optimistic, which is really nice to hear. Nithin, I heard from you that you agree that it's maturing, but you also believe that trust plays a part in that. Nada, you are kind of also agreeing with our guests here. But there are more nuances to this, right? It's not just about maturity. Maturity is an umbrella term, right? And underneath that umbrella term, you have so many things. You have the culture of the region that you're operating, and that you have the culture of the organization, right? Those play a huge part. How collaborative design is with other functions. Design by nature is a highly collaborative function, guys. If you hear otherwise, don't believe it. It's supposed to work together. It's always working together, and in my experience, I've never experienced design working otherwise. So, how does that? What is the role of collaboration when it comes to, especially, what are the nuances of designing for your specific industry? Like, you are designing for Saudi, right? So what are the nuances? Does culture play a role in it? Does it have anything to do with maturity? Is that a challenge? How are you tackling that challenge?
So that's a big question for Saudi. First of all, when I take a look at the Saudi market compared to the UAE market, it's very different. So any designer going from the UAE to Saudi and thinking they can apply the same sort of learnings culturally in the UAE to Saudi, it doesn't really work that way. There is a lot of differences with the Saudi market versus the UAE market. And I guess it's like that. As designers, anywhere we go, what do we need to do? We need to understand the markets and the people that we're building for. So it goes without saying. In Saudi specifically, since you asked, we have to realize that it is a population of over 40 million people, and Arabic is their primary language. Even the applications that they're using it in Arabic first. So whereas the UAE, we have multiple languages and multiple cultures that we're designing for, in Saudi, you need to really focus on the Saudi market and their language, obviously, preferences. Now, when it comes to the financial space, we also need to consider that the regulations in Saudi are also very different. So Sharia compliance is extremely important there, meaning that Sharia means that when you design in finance, you need to ensure that there is no interest being applied, there is no uncertainty, and there is no risk happening as well. So these three elements is what makes a product or financial product Sharia compliant, which is a very important factor in the financial space that we're building for, especially for an organization that I work for is a financing organization. We finance SMEs, and obviously fees and interest and these kind of things do come into play. So to answer your question about the nuances, there is a lot of focus on regulation there, and if you don't follow them, you will get fined or you might even get kicked out of the country. So you need to really be careful with understanding the regulation, but most importantly is understanding the customers from my perspective. The regulation are the rules, and we can all understand the rules, that the customers and getting into that one-on-one space with them, learning about their needs, their pain points is going to be extremely important as well.
I can actually add a couple of things because from Tamara, our 80% of users are from Saudi as well. So the bigger difference when we think about a design from UAE versus Saudi, as you mentioned, it's about, there is a more local feeling culture, which means in UAE, of course, there is a global or multicultural an aspect to it, versus when it becomes a more local. So the interesting part is that there is a more they value relationship more. It's not like in UAE you don't value relationship, but I'm just saying there within the local cultural nuances, there is a huge value in terms of that family feeling. Plus that also can bring in the aspect of better tone of voice, how do we can bring in that in the communication part, that because that's also you cannot go wrong over there when we in design. But on the other side here, you have that global approach. You have multi people from different backgrounds and more accommodative in a different way altogether. So I think a couple of additional points I would say these in line with the earlier points mentioned is this family relationship, and how do we make sure this is in the tone of voice of your design, or how do you communicate in terms of product communication, etc. So yeah.
you have to understand the landscape for your customers. You have to understand your customer behaviour. I mean, we've recently started designing an app for Pakistan, so that it's not new news. I mean, Mashreq is opening a bank in Pakistan, so that was a completely new market for us. So we had to go in and do some research on behaviours. You know, how do people in the region behave? How do they behave differently? We can't just expect that we're going to be able to launch the same product in the same way with the same messaging to a completely different market. And so you really do have to understand the market. So if you want to create that trust with your customers, you have to be able to talk to them in the right way, and you have to understand what it is that they need and what are the things that they worry about, what are their concerns, how do they make decisions. What drives them to open a bank account? What drives them to get a credit card or a loan? What's the difference between one bank and another? You know, what are the challenges that they're facing that are forcing those decisions? And you know, Pakistan, for example, they make their decisions in a very different way to people in the UAE. The way that people in the UAE make their decisions. So you have to think about all of that when you're putting your product together, right? When you're thinking about how you're going to put that out into the market. You have to think about all of those different aspects and how it all fits together. And you might have a journey, for example, that works really well in one market, but you'll have to make changes to it. One for language, two for tone, the compliance regulations, as was discussed before. So all of these things do come into play in two different ways. One, in what you deliver for your customers, and two, how you work with your team and manage your team, and your stakeholders against all of these different challenges as well. I don't think I really answered your question there. I think I went off on a complete tangent.
Some really good nuggets there. Some really, trust, building for trust, and also gaining trust in the organization. I think those are two different things, but I understand your point,
Gaining trust in an organisation with the team. As I said, the team has grown. It's grown over time. We move really quickly, trying to make cultural changes and cultural shifts while you're also building a product is really challenging, right? And I think to answer a question about how you do that when you're growing a team and you have a large team, is that you have to involve stakeholders to build trust.
Amazing. That's a great segue to the next question I was going to ask, actually, and it's about collaboration, right? So in my experience, I have always experienced design as a highly collaborative function, and I've also been leading and building design operations in my previous job. So I've seen how design can create magic when it's collaborative, the environment is supporting it, and the culture is collaborative and trustworthy as well. In the financial industry, in my very, very short period of time, has given me this perception that collaboration is perhaps different in this industry. And I'm curious to understand from your perspectives, how do you find design collaborating with other functions in your different organizations? Especially, Nithin, maybe we can start with you this time because you are in a fintech space and it's slightly different from being in a traditional bank. So how collaborative is design? How well received that collaboration is? Is it kind of woven into the DNA of the organization, or it is something that design has to drive? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'll try to answer this and share my thoughts in two different aspects. One, as a designer, like in the collaboration part, and second, from a fintech standpoint. As a designer, I think this is something that I usually share with the team and then within in general as well. Design as a function, I always feel it's an enabler because, of course, there is designing part of it, but on the other side, when I say enabler, I mean, everybody designs, right? So everyone like adds to the solution. So let it be like, let's say something that you're coming out with a new product, or potentially you are actually bringing in, so a stakeholder which is within your organization, or it could be the user, or it could be somebody else as well. So I mean, people who are part of this journey, they are actually like designing to the solution. So I think the biggest part as a designer is in any tech organization. That's why the first part I'm trying to like answer from a design standpoint is design being an enabler. So this enabling part could be through the workshops or early discussions and like getting the views and making sure like we have an iterative mindset. I think this actually brings in that value. Now coming to the fintech standpoint, I think, and this is where it becomes interesting, because there is a lot more of compliance or a lot more of regulatory. I mean, the typical collaboration that we speak about is always between the product manager, or like I'm talking from a digital standpoint. So product manager, or let's say the user researcher, engineer, or maybe from a business or sales, or different like within the organization. But when it becomes a fintech side, so then on the other side, you need to like expand this collaboration mindset towards like compliance teams or regulatory teams, or even more like you take further step in understanding the traditional system that is working over there. So it's a lot of domain knowledge that needs to be there. So that's where this collaboration becomes even more crucial than the normal world would do. So I think just to summarize, that design enabler factor, that every designer is an enabler alongside you design. So you make sure like everybody, you find design in everybody else as well. And then second part is about being in fintech, you expand this from beyond your typical set of people, because there's a huge amount of compliance, regulatory, country specific things as well, because I mean it's also different countries have different ways of like looking at things and how users add or do finance on a daily basis. Yeah.
Thank you, Nithin. Please, Nada, what do you think?
I agree a lot with what Nithin said, but I'm going to give you guys an example of something that my team has recently done for Alraedah to be these design enablers. So as a financing company, there's a lot of different processes that occur, that from the moment that you get a lead, someone who's interested as an SME, interested in a finance, all the way till you want to close this customer, or their finance will close. So there's many processes that will occur during these stages, and many different parts of the business are involved, from sales to crediting to finance operations to closing to customer service and engagement. So there's so many different players in the business that are involved. As designers, where do we fit in? We're helping them design these processes, but do we really understand what they're going through every single day to get from point A to closing a customer? The only way that we were able to do it is to actually sit in their seats. And so one of the big achievements I believe that my team did this year is we created a program, we called it Fusion Flow, where we brought in not just the design team, the product team, the engineering team, the marketing team, and any other team in the organization that really needed to understand the full sales experience from A to Z. And we did a shadowing program where we sat with all members of these of the business and watched them conduct their day-to-day operations, so that we can actually empathize with what they're going through. And this was a process that we did it over a couple of weeks, obviously, so you can actually continue with your day-to-day job. But at the end of this program, the feedback that we got from engineers, the feedback that we got from product, from designers, from marketing was eye-opening, because they could finally understand what our customers are going through, but also what our internal business is going through when we're trying to get a customer from point A to point Z. This is truly how you build collaboration, because we are empathizers, right? We always say empathize with your customer, understand the business, but actually as designers, you need to sometimes go and make these decisions where you're in the shoes of different people in the business. And what happened at the end is the whole business started to recognize design. Oh, you guys are the ones that did this program, and you guys are the ones who were sat with us and asked us these questions and really wanted to know what we do. And when they get to know you in that way, they're going to be more open to working with you. They're going to be more open to trusting you, to helping you build those experiences. So just an example of one of the things that we did to become these design enablers, as you're saying.
Yeah, actually, I've got a slightly different perspective. I mean, every job that I've had over the years, I've moved into a different industry. This is the first time I've worked in banking, for example. And I think from a design perspective, the process that we go through, actually it's the same. There are rules and regulations in every industry that you work in. So, for example, I've worked in automotive, I've worked in telephony, and all of those have different rules and regulations that you have to abide by, that you have to understand. You know, and so the process that you go through from a design perspective, I think, is the same in all of those industries. I agree with the design as enabler perspective, absolutely. But I think that regardless of what industry you're working in from a design perspective, our process very much stays very, very similar. There might be certain, maybe some different things that you're doing, but generally I think the process that I've gone through in all of these industries is very similar.
What is good design? We all know. Swiss Army knife, humble Google search page, the Airbnb, the Apple iPhone, MacBooks. We love them. We love our Teslas. Everyone knows what good design is, what it feels like, how it works. However, still, 2024 and it's ending. We have to prove the value of design. When will that stop? When will the world learn inherently what is the value of good design? Is that still a challenge? Is that still a struggle in your organizations, in your roles, in your experiences?
So this is like an age-old question, and I think, you know, we've got to this. I've been in this job for, I don't know, a long, long time. I think coming at it from the wrong perspective there, you know, especially when you're looking from a product design perspective, the role that we play is to help the organisation achieve, or the business achieve something, right? It's usually to sell something, right? So everything that we do should be hooked into those key results, right? So how are we helping the business to achieve those key results? That's how we're proving the value of the work that we do. And you know, I think if you're going to, if you're trying to get, you know, someone head of finance, for example, to think that what you're doing is valuable, you're probably just beating the wrong drum there. You know, they have a different job that they're focusing on. So as long as the work that we're doing is steering the company in the right direction, and you know, there's increments, you can show the value of things. You know, you can do A/B testing on different designs that you're putting out. We can, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can show the value of the work that you're doing. But I think, you know, if we're still saying now that we've got to prove the value of design, you know, then I think we're just looking at it from the wrong angle.
I mean, I think it's a two-sided thing, right? So one from a stakeholder understanding, as a business understanding of design, and on the other side, whether designers themselves can actually prove their value. So I think that's where like a two-side that I bring in, because from a stakeholder understanding or business understanding, I think there is a significant change that has happened like in the last few years. If you look at, there was always louder voice in the room taking the call, okay, and let's go with this, or the other aspect of it, versus now like CEOs or like an executives and people started understanding the value of design, or what design can actually bring in. So I think that part is evolving for sure. But on the other side, I think it's from a designer standpoint, how much they can, I think what Amanda mentioned in terms of like what value that you bring in, right? And because it's just about the aesthetic value, or this more functional value, or business value, monetary value. So I think things that bring in, I think the more that designers like can bring in that value, I think then it gets balanced, and you don't need to like fight for it. So I would completely agree to the aspect of that value addition from a organizational or business value. But on the other side, I have seen significant change in the understanding of design in CEOs or executives in general. So that's my view, even Tamara's perspective I'm talking about.
So in my experience, when I was building for a fintech that was just like a startup fintech, design held a lot of values in the eyes of the leaders, because obviously they needed, first of all, to build a product from scratch. So they needed to understand customers, they needed to invest in research, they needed to invest in amazing design systems and UI and all that sort of stuff. So when I was working in that fintech space, I didn't really have to prove the value of design to these leaders as much. It was a given, and there was a lot of investment going into it. And I think anyone in a startup, you kind of might agree with kind of that mindset. However, when I moved to a more mature organization like Alraedah, where design, we're trying to be more product design led, we're trying to be more customer centric, where we've mostly been selling finances by calling our customers through sales calls. How can you now bring design and try to change this whole process? And you want to invest in a big design team, and you want to invest in all these tools and grow it. So actually, in my experience right now, there's a lot of work to actually prove the value of design, because our leaders want to see the metrics. They want to see how is design actually returning on investment for this organization, and they need to see that connection because they're investing a lot in it. So this is something where now it's been more of a challenge in the past year or so, that I've been focusing a lot on design metrics and focusing a lot on proving the value of design. And obviously that goes back to that initial question we had about how do you build trust, because you need trust in that equation, and you also need to understand the connection between your design and the ROI of the business. So those two have to come together, and you need to make sure that you're not just focused on the outputs that design is providing to an organization, but of course the outcomes that relate back directly to the ROI.
Very well said, Nada. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, all of you. We can flip the question to you guys. What's your biggest challenge when advocating for design in your organizations, in your roles? Feel free to share. The code is there if you lost the page, access to the page that I shared earlier. You can just go to menti.com and use the code that is displayed here. Taking this forward, we'll get the answers. I think this is what's next? What is the biggest innovation opportunity moving forward in 2025? What is the trend that you are seeing that design will be driving in the finance industry? I can start with you, Nada, since you have the mic.
I think there's obviously a lot of innovations that we can talk about, and you hear AI being mentioned all the time. To speak from my experience right now, what I'm seeing in the industry I am in, which is the financing industry, service design is becoming extremely important. That omni-channel experience, the service design and omni-channel experience, I think is really important, and I believe that that's going to, when you get that right, and as designers, as you're building in that mindset, you're going to be able to reach innovation ideas such as better personalization, such as using AI to be able to, for decisioning. In the finance world where I'm from, we're trying to figure out how can we move crediting and make that go really fast. And I'm sure a lot of people in the banking space can attest to that. So all of these different innovations are obviously going to be there, but we need to make sure that the experience is done correctly, and from a design perspective, we need that service design element and really innovating on how we build those types of experiences.
I think I reiterate one of the points that I mentioned earlier in terms of the biggest difference in finance, I believe, is simple user experience, because digital design industry for finance just taught us that like banking can be simple, because traditionally people have been using like a traditional like a way of like looking at it, and all the, I mean, they were okay. I mean, it has been, it's not like in banking industry has gone down before digital industry came in, but it is working well and it was working all together, but became complex. And right now people always associate finance to like complex systems, because that's a mental model that people have. But I think digital industry like brought in the value that banking can be simple. So I think simple user experience to me is like the key until we attain where we want to, and that's going to be there. Of course, there are like technologies or like an AI and bunch of other different angles that you can bring into that, but that I focus on that, or like, and I see that getting there is the biggest hurdle or biggest challenge that's going to be in 2025 and way forward.
Cool, thank you. Amanda?
I think one of the biggest challenges actually, and I'm not sure what I can see here, change. Right? We're at a point where everything's going to pivot and change, and I don't think we've really seen a change as big as this since about 30 years, and the way that people behave as well, and our expectations, customer expectations, is going to change, and it's going to happen quite rapidly. And I think it's down to AI and that change in behaviour that's going to bring. I don't see that there though.
Yeah, so they are saying budget is the biggest here. Yeah. No access to data. This is 2025. And pace of delivery is another one. Resistance in learning, fear of redundancy. Budget is at the center of everything.
Yeah, I think and the reason why I think change is going to be the big challenge, I think, because the expectation for design and what design means is going to change. I think I think we're going to become a much more conversational society from a digital perspective. And you can see that already in the way that people are interacting with the different AIs that are out there. So I think those expectations then of what design means and how we design for that is going to be a big change. So I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think it's necessarily something you have to fear. I just think it's something we're going to have to adapt to quickly.
That's really exciting. I mean, AI is exciting for me. I have a question for you guys. By raise of hands, how many people are using AI in their day-to-day work? Almost everyone here. That's good. By raise of hands, again, another question. Would you be comfortable discussing your car loan with AI? Your car loan. You're applying for a car loan. You're getting a car. Okay. Would you be comfortable discussing your personal finances with AI? Investments? Okay. That is that option. That's that option. I think there is nothing to be afraid of when it comes to AI, and I think people are ready. However, we have not seen many examples.
Actually, it depends on the user. For us, we are fine still. For others, we might not be fine still while investing.
Absolutely, trust. This is where trust comes in, and trust is a big factor in the financial industry. So in your experience, how are you planning to embrace AI in your consumer experiences or consumer products? Because I'm seeing a lot of adoption in banks, again, very limited experience, in internal tools for the employees, but in the organization to improve productivity. But beyond that, really exploring the potential of AI for consumer-facing products. I'm not seeing banks warm up to that, but if your experience is different, please share your insights. Feel free to.
I mean, at least in Tamara's context, we haven't started exploring in that direction yet, because there are a lot more things that we are currently chewing on. But very basic thing I could actually talk about is, from a design standpoint, we invest a bit in the creatives or creative directions, or in terms of and the illustration directions few other directions we take an AI kind of first approach, because especially that saves a lot of money from a brand standpoint in terms of having when we work on different markets, so having lesser photo shoots and having more, because AI is actually solving that for us in terms of bringing in that creative side of it, in faces that is resembling Saudi or from a UAE standpoint. But apart from that, from a consumer experience standpoint, we are not currently investing much into that direction. I don't know.
Yeah, so I completely understand that, because in Saudi, our customers still want to speak to somebody. It's extremely important for them, especially when they're going through a financing experience. There's a lot of information being shared, personal information. In fact, sometimes we even get our customers saying, "Can I just give you my bank account information and you log in and pull out my statements, because I don't want to do that myself." This is showing a pain point that customers have actually still with banking, just even logging in and trying to pull a statement to share that. So there is opportunity, because if you have really simple ways using AI to help the credit decisioning, for example, something that we're looking at right now, because time to cash is our metric. How can we get cash in the hands of these SMEs as soon as possible so they can do what they want to do best, which is grow their business? So there are opportunities for AI, and that's what we're trying to discover right now. Where can we use AI to help speed up that experience, to help make it easier for our customers? And right now we're at an exploratory stage. So I can't say that we're using it more than, for example, I'm sure a lot of banks here are using the bots, for customer service and customer support. I think we're all doing that. But there are definitely areas in the process, financing process, that we can use AI to our advantage, and it requires that some testing and abilities to see how we can get it. And we're not there yet, so it is going to be coming hopefully very soon, but it's definitely not at a point where you can, as a financial institute, trust it to give you those decisions just yet.
Do you think that would be business-driven or design-driven change?
I think it has to be a combination, and it has to come together. And this is what we're talking about with the collaboration side of things. Even as designers, when we're designing these experiences, the collaboration stage means that designers needs to speak to business, needs to speak to compliance, needs to speak to crediting and all that sort of stuff. So it's definitely a collaboratory experience, and it has to come together, has to come from both sides.
Look, a couple of years ago we did some customer research on chatbots. So this was before ChatGPT was launched. AI wasn't something that anyone was thinking about at that time, and people weren't comfortable at that point really sharing their financial information even through a chatbot. Now that's what we learned just a couple of years ago, but behaviour has changed very, very quickly. The way that we adopt the way that we have adopted this has been very, very fast, as you saw everyone here, and not just in the design and tech industries as well. My friends across all industries are using AI in some way or another to create lesson plans, create music plans. They're using it for all sorts of really interesting things, and I think that in banking there are an awful lot, in finance there's an awful lot of things. I mean, look at financial education right now. Financial education is a big thing that schools are looking at the moment, and it's one of the things that I always still quite surprises me is how many customers are really unsure of their finances, or even how to manage finances. So something that can just really make that so easy for customers, I think, is going to be, something that I think all banks are going to be looking at for using AI, how we can do that, so how we can make those financial decisions for customers so much easier. So I think there's an awful lot out there. Some changes that are going on up there. So I think there's a huge amount of work that banks will be doing. I think they're just putting their toe in the water at the moment, and I think their staff are using it for lots of different things. You said creating images, videos, different ways, but I don't think it's going to be very long before it's being used for fraud detection, for helping customers with their financial education, for all of their support needs. It's going to be there to give them all the information that they want about their finances in a way that they can't at the moment. So I think there's a lot that's going to be there.
Absolutely. We have some really interesting insights from the audience here. Thank you so much for contributing. KYC. It is something that I want to change as well. It's so painful. Onboarding is painful in most of the bank financial journeys. And it is super important to remove that friction from our customers' journeys. So that's really interesting. Customized offers. That is true. Personalized offers. I think banks definitely can leverage AI to offer make better suited offers and surface more personalized content to their customers. Make it simpler. We still have that. Shorten processes. Ease of access to info. Customer centricity. That's really good. Quick sync with services. Clarity of info, but KYC remains at the center of importance. If a designer is moving to the financial industry, what's your advice? What should they equip themselves with? Soft skills, hard skills?
I don't see that drastically different in finance industry specifically, right? Because soft skills and hard skills are super important in terms of design itself. And soft skills, I would say, even more. Not from a finance industry standpoint, but in general, because in terms of storytelling, in terms of narrating, in your design decisions, in terms of because there's a question that we have been asking about building trust with stakeholders and making stakeholders understand what design is, the value of design is. In those cases, there is a huge subjectivity part of it, and articulating the right data or decisions that what you have made. So soft skills plays a huge role. There was a time previously, if you look at a long back, designers were more on hard skills and less on soft skills. I think that has changed, or that's changing, where soft skills has become a critical part and people started embracing it a lot. So I don't see that different from finance and normal industries. So I would keep soft skills as well. The important piece, considering hard skill is there.
What soft skills do you look for, Nithin?
So,
yes.
Like I said, I think in terms of soft skills, just like I said, articulating well your journey in terms of the product experiences. If I'm interviewing, if I'm talking to designers in general, so I expect them to most of the times they have done good job. They have done designing, they have good intuition, they have brought in that value in the deliverable, but sometimes just because it doesn't have the right narrative in terms of your storytelling, it doesn't fly, and sometimes that affects in an organization. So storytelling or narrating is a key thing that I always look at it.
I would agree, soft skills for me is most important, but there's two things I'll say for that. I look for proactivity, someone who is, if there's something you don't know, you go and you say, okay, I don't know, but I'm going to go learn it. Proactivity is one of the most important it's not even a skill, the most important soft skill that you can provide to your team. And it comes in many different ways. It's not just about going to learn something, it's about reaching out to people, talking to people, trying to, if you find yourself not having much to do, speaking up and talking about that, that's someone who's being very proactive, and it's one of the most important things I look for in a team member. And that actually goes to the other piece, because it comes together, is really someone who's a problem solver. If you're a designer, you should be a problem solver. We're all here trying to solve problems, but if you have that problem solving mentality, you're never going to be in a situation where you need to be told what to do, you need to be told what to design. You will be going after finding out what those problems are and trying to find solutions. And that's, I think, what makes a good designer. And if you have those two things, then the hard skills will come regardless.
Amanda?
don't think the skills need to be any different than any other industry. I think the soft skills are really important. I agree with actually what both said. Storytelling, I think, is a really important skill, especially if you're trying to sell something or show something or prove the value of something. How to tell that story is a really important skill. Was your question earlier? Was it around hiring for as well?
What do you look for?
What do I look for?
Yeah,
what do I look for? Because it really depends. So it depends on the type of person what I'm looking for. All skills can be learned, right? So attitude is harder. So attitude is really important. I think as saying about go-getter attitude. So I think that's the thing that I do look for. What's their attitude? How will they fit in with the team? And then of course you have to look at all of the other skill sets as well. That has to be complementary skill sets. But I think attitude is the most important thing. I mean, I've interviewed people before where they're practically sort of like slouching in their chair, and you sort of think, no, if that's your attitude at this point, then it's only going to get worse further down the line. So that's the key decider, I think, for me.
Maybe you need to change the chair.
Maybe.
No, I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts around this. I think if there is anything that I want to add is quality, right? So one of the qualities that I look for when I look for designers is optimism. A healthy dose of optimism. It is so easy to feel negative, to see the glass half empty. But as designers, I think and we are supposed to be great storytellers, problem solvers. And I think optimism is a quality. If you have it in a designer, if you have that mindset, you can really influence the space around you, the people sitting next to you, whether they're from business or tech or having difficulties working with you, or you're having difficulties working with them. With your optimistic quality, you can really influence them in a positive way. I've seen that really is a powerful tool. And leverage that. I think for design is always at the forefront of leading change, whether we like it or not. We're always there. And if we are to do that job, that tough job, then we need to keep our optimism at we need to keep it healthy. I believe. That's my personal belief. Okay, we are almost at the end of our discussion. I never want to end it. I'm really learning a lot and I'm really enjoying it. Thank you so much for your contribution as well. My last question to you guys is, in one sentence, if you could convince a skeptical CEO about the value of design in your role, what would it be? What would you say to a skeptical CEO who doesn't believe in the true value of design, not just make the logo bigger, design?
What would I say? I think almost every CEO I've worked with has been interested in design in some way or another.
What did you say to them then? That they became interested?
I don't know. I think if they brought you in the first place, then they realise that they need to change something. So you're already in a positive position, right? And so if I was having to convince a CEO, the value of design, and it would be you brought me in to do something, you brought me in for a reason. There's obviously something that you want to improve, something that you want to change. So they already know that change needs to be done, otherwise you wouldn't be there. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that there aren't other sceptical stakeholders that you need to deal with along the way, but you don't necessarily need to prove your value or the value of design to all of those, right? So they know why you're there. They've hired you to do your job. They need to let you get on and do that, and not worry too much about white space and things like that.
Oh, Amanda,
they've got bigger things. They've got
one clever sentence. The magic.
Yeah, if someone really is determined that they're not going to believe the value, then I would say that you're in the wrong organisation. Why are you even there? If someone at the very top is questioning even the reason for design, I think proving the value of design is a process, right?
Absolutely.
And it takes time, but if you've already got a team and you're there, then they already believe that there's a value to be had, and that value is shown in lots of different ways. You can show how you've increased the app rating so there's lots of different things that you can do to show and prove the value. But I don't think there's a particular magic word. Maybe you can reel off something that Steve Jobs has said at some point to make yourself sound clever.
I think, I agree that, you cannot convince a CEO just with a skeptical one, with one sentence. But still, I would like to give it a try in two lines, I would say. I would say design is the differentiator and design is patience. And I'll tell you why. Because in my experience, the companies that I have worked with, let it be Glovo. So Glovo, we have been operating in 26 countries approximately, and most of the countries we have been either in the first or second position. So which means even today, here, think about Tamara and there is Tabby. So there are different competitors that you have. At some point, all these businesses are going to be saturated. So when I say saturation, in terms of how much optimization you do, in Glovo, for example, we try doing a lot of optimizations and things and everything. After some point, okay, you improve the delivery time. So Glovo is a on-demand delivery platform, just like Talabat. It's you cannot do after some point. So one of the key learnings that I had, and this is from one of the conversations I had with a CEO, was then the difference is the brand or design that connects with the users, how you actually, because a huge example being part of Delivery Hero, you might know as well, there is a brand in South Korea, Wova, Baemin. They have about 80% of the entire market, and that's 80-85% of it. And the huge connection they have is the difference is in the brand and design that they bring in the users. So that's why after that maturity or saturation point, I believe design is a differentiator. And second line, design is patience, because everybody wants design to be perfectly correct always, which is not true. You cannot, because it's always a journey and you need to get there. That's a journey and that goes in maybe weeks, months, sprints, I don't know, years, and where you reach, where you want to be. So that differentiation and patience is what I will try to share. But still, I don't think he will be convinced, but he or she will be convinced.
I'm going to answer your question easily. I would say investing in design is investing in your customers, and that's investing in your return on investment. That's all.
That's amazing. I love it. Deserves a round of applause, guys.